about about 10 years ago, in 2014, a little show hit the scene. A little show called Tokyo Ghoul. And Tokyo Ghoul was a very interesting moment because while we had the mainstream really pick up in terms of Sword Art Online and Attack on Titan hitting the scene, kind of hitting the Americas and like inspiring all the high schoolers to be like, yo, that's an anime. That's kind of cool. And what what really kind of impacted me the most about that time frame is how we were rapidly going from like this Naruto, Bleach, and who was the other guy? Oh, Dragon Ball Z, and we were transitioning into this like more of a, hey guys, anime is serious and edgy, and that's where we got kids being stuck in video games. That's where we got giant Titan-sized people smashing, eating other people's moms out, and that's where we got literal people eating people out. And yes, that's where we end up today. Tokyo Ghoul is by far one of the, I want to say it's the one that got all the the night owls outside. And it's just interesting to kind of sit back down years after what that initial like viewing was, or even what that initial mindset was at that point, and to again just kind of come back around and try to perceive these shows. What is the deal, what they are about, what kind of like implications they give off, and all that stuff. And I gotta tell you, Tokyo Ghoul, quite the story to tell. It's, if you don't know, Tokyo Ghoul involves a young lad named Kaneki Ken, and he is in a universe where essentially there are man-eating ghouls, monsters that with special abilities called ghouls. And while for the most part this isn't a huge widespread problem, the issue now is that there's been recent activity between those animals and the surrounding general public doesn't really know how to combat this, or at least defend themselves from the general madness. And so we see the story of a young lad who is by all means not, let's call him, not as aggressive as a, let's say, a super ambitious person might be, and without putting that lightly. And the story does an interesting point of kind of putting that into perspective. A lot of things that happen in the moment with anime sometimes tend to go over the head because we don't have that foresight, right? But kind of seeing all the pieces being placed from the first episode and seeing certain moments happen for the next 4 episodes that they portrayed to us in the movie theater, it was there. The idea that there were certain things that were brewing underneath the surface, certain people that were trying to get certain results, and how that has been affecting the people in the city. And it's a little, right, obviously it's kind of like, it always makes you think about that JoJo line from like, the stand user could be anybody, but like we're naturally attracted to stand users, so like don't worry, there'll always be some conflict in our universe. And you get a little bit of that from here. It does kind of reflect a bit to Call of the Night in terms of how there is this nightlife underground city, and there are certain people that are members to this exclusive circle. And while it can be all sunshines and rainbows within that circle, being in that environment, you tend to see just how much it takes to keep this facade or this kind of entourage going. And yeah, at the end of the route, we have the infamous scene, the infamous chair scene. Jason, Kaneki, chairs. And we have a moment, I want to say the defining moment of Kaneki and Rise, the internal conflict. Because for the whole beginning part of the series, we're left with the idea that this kid was raised in the household where he never really had like a, let's call it a authoritative figure. Maybe that's what we're going with here. But like the idea that because he was raised by a single mother who never really stood up for herself when it came to kind of like setting healthy boundaries, even with her own sister, as in like, hey, don't take my money. It gave development to this kid to kind of pretend that that is the normality or the norm or the best way to confront any conflict, right? And so yeah, this whole series we have this dude who's kind of like not very proactive, I guess, and we put him in a situation where he should step up and he should kind of learn. And while he does give in that effort, granted, it's great because it's trying to grow, trying to learn, trying to adapt to his situation, we still kind of see that there is that inner working, that deep central conflict or trauma that comes from being placed in this environment and feeling comfortable in that environment, whether that be the comfort of a safe home or whether that be the comfort of like not having to deal with the responsibilities, can be a whole different part of the structure. But this dude has had time to kind of go through that, and while it's been more or less forced on him, at the end of the rope we get the final, because this dude, this kid, was left alone at a very young age. Lost both parents, orphaned, like around, I don't want to give you an age, but young enough to kind of not have that, that weight, that communication. I believe because this guy was such a reader that he kind of shut himself in that universe, and it never really gave him something to grow outside of or to aspire. And that sucks because unfortunately we don't think he's a bad guy. He's pretty chill. However, because of what he is and how unique he becomes at the end of, or in the process of his transformation, you know, growing into who he is, he's constantly being targeted. And again, one can be like, yo man, that's just life coming after you and all that. But yeah, how do we know how far is too far? And what do we expect to find when we hit a breaking point? Because ladies and gentlemen, our boy has a breaking point. And it is in that internal conflict of self-struggle where Rise essentially lays it out to him that unless you really attack and go for it like the animal that you are, then you will never find a peace. Which is a very, very hard pill to swallow. And again, watching all this as a person, developed person, it's hard not to obviously take to accept what they're saying in an understand what they're trying to say here. And yeah, for a big portion of this, we do see how not great this universe is, how not great these people are, and you can naturally reflect that to your own experience and feel certain emotions about this dude who's being funneled into this position and really being forced to be something he's never wanted to be. But when the action calls for it and enough is enough, my God, this guy, This guy goes on a good one. And I think that's kind of what everybody was here for. I didn't, I was growing up in a time where like, it was like, oh yeah, the hero, he gets in there, he does his shit, and like, they fix whatever thing they need to fix, because that's the perfect ending. That's the happy ending in the generalized male fantasy, or whatever you want to call it, the whatever male fantasy, whatever stupid shit they called it. And just to see how this guy keeps on trying to keep that sanity, let's call it, that sanity, keep it intact, but slowly gets pushed closer and closer to this breaking point, to the point that, well, there's nothing left to hold back. And that was a wild moment for me, at least in 2014. I don't think I really took it as impactful as, like, say it should have been, because there's a lot going in there, especially with the fact of how like Rise really gets in there, and like how you can kind of like make a case for how when this person starts dating a brand new human being, then this, okay, as a male, if you're gonna be dating a female partner, there will be natural instances where you reflect on how this person reflects on the people who raised you, which will naturally be a representation of the mother figure, and how that kind of could become this new girl coming into your life and being like, yo, your mom sucks, your mom's dumb, or whatever, and be like, hey, it could be a positive thing. It could be like, yo, your mom's abusing you, dog, like something is not right and all that. Or it could easily be abuse from this new person, which is what we've seen, right? Kaneki's story doesn't start off with like, I met the perfect girl. It starts off with, I met the beautiful girl and she tried to kill me. And that should say a lot. I think for the most part, it's very obvious kind of where the representations lie. You see certain people kind of have a connection through the pain, the trauma that they built together. And then you have other people who are just there to eat people just for the satisfaction of doing it. They call Risa the binge eater because they don't need that. But the act of having that many people in her room says things. So checking it all out and kind of like really seeing how it came together. Tokyo Ghoul, it has this stuff. Quick little story, I'll never forget. I don't know what happened exactly, but when my nephew was younger, something happened, and he essentially was not allowed to watch Tokyo Ghoul for whatever reason, digitally, like through his iPhone or whatever. I don't even know. And so then your boy just kind of walks in, slides in slowly, and be like, "Hey, I heard you're trying to watch Tokyo Ghoul. Here's a Blu-ray." And just walk away. So that kid saw that show very early on, and yeah, I think it's you reflect on that and you're like, oh shit, what did you show him? But at the same time, it's interesting to see what kind of lessons someone like him would take into his future, and what kind of person that makes him. He's a nice dude, he's a sweet guy, but I obviously, if he's related to me, then I know he has like every person has a dark, shadowy self. It's only a matter of questioning of how obtuse you will allow the shadow to grow, or if you have a responsibility to yourself and maybe to your community to try to understand it, accept it, and convert it into a positive force, or something or the other. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of the Tokyo Ghoul. Interesting plot, interesting story. The battles are kind of like, it's funny because it's like an interesting deep thing, and then you start doing flips and punches and stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, we're going full Star Wars now. But yeah, so it has a lot of that stuff, and it is edgy as fuck. And if you don't know, that opening theme song, Unravel, fucking changed generations. So every time the opening played in the movie theater, we just hear everybody going like, oh shit, Damn. And so yeah, it's a blast. It's a cool time. I like that they decided to come back around and do a little presentation of the show. They compiled essentially 5 episodes from the beginning to the last final episode. And yeah, those episodes kind of hit. They chose pretty good ones. They chose strong emotional beats, and for the most part, I think if you were to walk into this movie theater and being like, I don't know what the hell Tokyo Ghoul is, you'd at least come out being like, damn, that was a story. Damn. And I guess that's where we want to be in this generation of anime. One thing I will say though is that this was literally episodes like glued together, complete with ending credits and opening credits. So I don't know if that was like a personal touch because they know how good those songs slap, or if now we're just getting super lazy with the anime compilation films. You know what I mean? So let's look into that one. But regardless, beautiful stuff, great stuff, fun stuff. I hope you get the chance to check it out. I don't know about that one. We'll have to wait and see. I think it was a one night only. Yeah, I think yesterday was a one night, which was a bit of a bummer because they only played it in English dub. So I saw the English dub, and to be fair, it was actually pretty good. Like if you all remember Funimation did the English dub for Tokyo Ghoul, and there is one specific character, Jason's guy friend, that has like a full voice and everything, and I just hear that guy and I'm like, oh yeah, it's that one dude from the Funimation guy. So it was honestly a nice blast from the past on that case. That was, I believe, recorded 10 years ago, so in 2014, so a good 10 years ago. So man, time flies by. But that'll be, make sure don't eat any ghouls. Don't go out with ghouls that night. That's all I'll say about that. Wait. There's more. It doesn't, huh? It doesn't, huh? There's more. Daiyokuna. Yeah. Osu. That's right. Oh, hold on. Yosh. Jujitsu Kaisen. I don't watch Jujitsu Kaisen, but if I had a nickel every time someone was like, oh my god, have you seen Jujitsu Kaisen? I'd have a few nickels. And so, like, regardless to say that my interest has been tested before. I believe I've seen up to like episode 3 or 4, and like I want to get into it, but for some reason, maybe it's the Naruto effect, the fact that I don't want to, because it is a group of 3 in the school, I don't necessarily feel like joining their lifelong adventure again. However, I know that that's not necessarily the case, and I'm out there and blah blah blah. But if you give me a contained, focused storyline of, for example, Jujitsu Kaisen 0, where we get the kid, right? I was like, that's fine. I know who he is. I don't know who he becomes, so this is completely fine. And then you get to this part, which is again more of a compilation anime compilation, but this is done a bit more, I think, well, in terms of how they don't have those ending cutscenes and they don't have those opening themes. This essentially is the backstory of Gojo Sensei, and I think one of the main bad guys. Again, I don't watch this show, so I'm really pulling at threads here, but I'm sure I've seen a couple of those figures in the promotional works for Jujitsu Kaisen. And, you know, I like to think I'm a smart guy, so I was able to connect a few dots here and there. And that was more than enough for a prequel with the OP guy. So, Jujitsu Kaisen is an interesting thing because it almost feels like anime was done with the edgy side of things. And then they figured out like, yo man, now we got the mainstream people in here. How do we keep the mainstream people around? And they go, poppy music. So I feel like there's been an interesting transition in anime itself, especially when it comes to the openings and the endings, to kind of have more of a like a EDM style song. And that's more clearly when you see the ending theme for the first ending theme of Jujitsu Kaisen, where it is them literally dancing to the sick ass beat or whatever. And so that's kind of the vibes that I got for this whole show. Maybe a little bit unfair, maybe a little judgmental, but the idea that like this was gonna be more of a stylistic approach to anime, and that like, hey, we're the cool kids, like shit like that. So that's probably why I stood away from that. And to be fair, that's pretty much everybody comes up to me saying to go watch it. Is usually some person who's like, I'm a cool kid. So, but regardless, you got to give credit where it's due, because when you call something jujitsu, which actually means like the spiritual elements, not kung fu fighting. It's them's fighting words, boy. Like real talk. That's fighting words. Jujitsu. Oh, you got some skills. You got a technique going on. All right. So show me your technique, but show me mine. And so what happens there is we get the interesting backstory of Gojo. We get Gojo before his breaking point, I want to call it. And not to get too spoilerific, if you know, you know. I hope you do know. Again, I don't know, but there is a interesting storyline where they're essentially on a mission to take care of this, let's call it the hostage situation, the package, to take care of the package. And yeah, that's their job. So they spend time with characters. You kind of start to see how they interact in their school life. You see Gojo for who he is. Like I like seeing how certain characters got to their points in their lives, because there's always like a moment that changes them, or there's something that makes them like reach further. We saw Tokyoghoul, and we saw how Kaneki hit his breaking point and became like the ultimate like monster, right? The ghoul. And then we know how Gojo is like this overpowered badass guy with the glasses and all that, and the big blue eyes. But it's a little boring for me if I don't know how he got there. And I guess that's a little selfish on my end, because you're gonna be like, Superman, man, what more do you need to know? Mr. Goddamn Terrific. But in my humble opinion, I think a supersonic punch is worth more when there's actual weight and emotional gravity behind that thrown punch. So to kind of see these two kind of like have to combat and battle with each other, and just trying to one up the best friend like over and over again, the usual rivalry setting, on name of impressing a girl or whatever. And yeah, we see this two parallel path, almost like Star Wars, if you want to put it in that section. We're building up to like to this point of differences where the two leads, the two best friends' main ideals no longer are able to be seen eye to eye. And I'm like, that's cool. That's always, I'm like a sucker for those, because it's like, it is Naruto and Sasuke back at it again. Damn, Jujitsu ain't beating these Naruto allegations, man. So it's interesting to see these guys like get in there, trying to like level up, trying to like understand their powers, and to get to the point where, yeah, they just go for it, man. That being said, Jujitsu does have the animation. This is Studio Pierrot, which is Naruto, actually the same people that animated Naruto. So if you needed any more reason to think that this was Naruto, this is goddamn Naruto. But yes, we get there. We get there. You see that mean guy? He gets there. How does he get there? You're gonna have to watch the film to watch and find out. So, if you haven't seen Jujitsu Kaisen, there is a compilation film that will naturally come over to Crunchyroll, so you don't have to go to theaters per se. But if you're curious about it, it exists, and you can watch those episodes on Crunchyroll. I really want to learn more. I want to see this. I do. And I feel like that's the best thing that these compilation things can do for the series, is that I see this and I go like, damn, shit's serious, man. It's pretty serious, man. Now I kind of need to know. Now I want to know. But the question is, will there be enough time, and can one make that commitment to actually sit down and do that rather than doing this, that, and everything else that needs to be done? So, well, think about it, hey? I don't know if Jujitsu Kaisen is done yet. I want to say that they finished their series, but I also feel like they might be on their final season, kind of like how every other freaking anime is taking like 3 years to finish their final season. But if I get confirmation and that happens, I will definitely try to make it happen. And maybe that will be our next journey of anime, going through Jujutsu Kaisen, watching the series, and seeing how our thoughts change with the characters and the seasons. So that's where we're at with that. Gojo-kun, he's alright. He's pretty cool. I actually really enjoyed the other homie. I'm not good with names or whatever, so like I'm just calling him Homie B, the main homie. But it's like this guy right here, cause this guy is like, he starts off as like the good guy. He's like, yo man, you gotta work with the rules and all that. And it's like, that's also a really interesting take on the breaking point. The breaking point where, cause it's just like Kaneki. He can no longer be like, you know what, fuck these rules, man. I'm gonna do this shit my own way. And that's what happens. That is the danger zone of the full like acceptance arc when it comes to a young male finding themselves in this crazy hypnotic world. You're always worried that they're gonna come out shitty on the other side, because that could mean such ramifications for the rest of the universe, and like, it shouldn't be that deep or that serious, but it is. So it's those moments that kind of really help open up and inspire, and maybe like rethink certain moments to where you go like, you know what, you never know what this guy's thinking, and like what he's had to go through, or what he's had to give up, or like what he's going through at this moment. Especially when like I see this dude and I kind of like, I understand where he's coming from, and like as shitty as that sounds to say out loud, it is true. Like, it is rough. Like, there is a moment where like he holds back from like obliterating people who clearly do not care about them, right? It's a long-winded way of saying that they're being praised for something they would never have wished for, and these dumbasses are out there congratulating them for doing this act that they did not want to do. So it's very easy for someone who is feeling a lot of emotions to just go, you know what, fuck this, and flip a switch. But he didn't, and that shows some sort of restraint. And it's crazy too, because we get into this whole conflict of like, well, the restraint only comes from not having things. So you're trying to implicate like borders for the people that can do these things. But the question is, should we have those borders implicated for responsible reasons, or is it another like endeavor in total? So yes. it's deep, man. When you can fucking teleport and you can create black holes with like the flick of your wrist, look at the wrist, then yeah, maybe you need to start asking questions as to what should I do with my life, and what can I do in this universe, and what is fair. Not necessarily fair that I shouldn't be doing things, but what is fair in terms of like, what's gonna make the party best? What is gonna make this party even better? Or what is gonna make this party worse? And do I wanna be that asshole? Or do I wanna be the life of the party? But hey, Jujitsu Kaisen. All there, all day, every day. We'll catch him. But until then, check it out. I don't know, I'll have to check it out. I've seriously been told by like multiple people to watch Jujitsu Kaisen, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll watch it, and I never watch it. So it's like, it's on me at the end of the day. But I just needed that convincing that this actually had substance behind it, and now I'm fairly convinced that there is a strong plot within this story. So, am I gonna pick up my old Naruto headband and whip back on for Team 7? Maybe. But first, you get those Burger King cups. So, until then, you boys gotta get that burger. Well, thanks for watching, you guys. If you like any of this anime, I would say definitely go check it out. It is anime. Anime is fun. There's gonna be some interesting more streamings in the future. I believe Neighbor Totoro is up in Adam, and a Grave of the Fireflies. It's happening, son. So look forward to that. We're gonna go record some reviews for Sakamoto, maybe Panty and Stocking, and we're gonna wish you a beautiful day. So, until then, hasta la próxima. Ya, mátame.